It started with a spilled coffee. I was rushing through the diner, balancing a tray of steaming mugs when I tripped. The coffee splashed across a man's pristine gray suit, soaking the crisp fabric. "Watch where you're going," he snapped, his voice sharp as a blade. He stood up, brushing at the stain, his jaw tight with irritation. I stammered an apology, my hands trembling as I dropped to the floor with a rag, scrubbing the tiles in a panic. The diner buzzed around us, plates clinking, customers chatting, but in that moment it was just me and him, locked in a clumsy collision. He was Daniel, sharp jawline, expensive silver watch glinting on his wrist, and a glare that could cut through steel. "This suit's worth more than your paycheck," he muttered, his tone dripping with disdain. I didn't know then that he'd just lost everything. His fortune, his pride, his entire world. I'm Emily, a waitress with a knack for bad timing, and this is my story. The next day, Daniel came back. The suit was gone, replaced by a wrinkled jacket and a faded shirt that hung loosely on his frame. He slid into a booth, avoiding my eyes as I approached with a coffee pot. His hands fidgeted on the table, the watch still there, a cruel reminder of what he'd been. I swiped his card at the register, and the machine beeped. "Declined." My stomach sank. "Cards declined," I whispered, sliding it back across the counter. He froze, then let out a laugh, a bitter, broken sound that echoed through the diner. "Guess I'm not the big shot anymore," he said, his voice cracking like glass. His eyes were hollow, shadowed with exhaustion, and I could feel it. His pride splintering right there in front of me. Later, he told me the truth. His tech startup, a glittering empire he'd built from nothing, had crashed overnight. Millions vanished in a storm of bad investments and betrayals. His so-called friends had disappeared, leaving him with nothing but debts and a lease he couldn't pay. He was broke, a king stripped of his crown, and I saw the weight of it settle into his bones. I don't know why I cared. Maybe it was the way he lingered by the door that night, the diner emptying out, his silhouette small against the neon glow. He had nowhere to go, and something in me couldn't let him fade into the dark. "Stay," I said, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "I've got a couch." He smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "You don't even know me. I could be dangerous." His tone was teasing, but his eyes were tired, searching mine for a reason. I shrugged, wiping down the counter. "I've seen worse." That night, he followed me to my tiny apartment, a cramped space with peeling paint and a sagging couch. The city lights flickered through cracked blinds as he settled in, his breathing soft in the stillness. He didn't say much, but I saw it, the weight of starting over etched into every line of his face. Days stretched into weeks. Daniel wasn't what I'd expected. The arrogant man from the diner softened, revealing someone else entirely. One morning, I found him under my kitchen sink, wrestling with a leaky pipe. He'd dug a rusty wrench from my junk drawer. His sleeves rolled up, hands smeared with grime. "Built my first app in a garage," he said, grinning as he tightened the faucet. "This is nothing." We laughed over burnt toast the next day, smoke curling from the toaster, and I felt it, safety in his quiet strength. He wasn't just some rich guy anymore. He was real, raw, and unexpectedly kind. The apartment, once a lonely shell, started to feel like home with him in it. We fell into a rhythm. He'd tinker with broken things, my flickering lamp, a wobbly chair, while I brewed coffee and told him stories from my shifts. He listened, really listened, his dark eyes softening as I rambled. I learned he'd grown up with nothing, clawing his way to success through sheer will. Now back at square one, he didn't complain. He just kept going. Next to him, I felt secure, like his determination was a shield against the world. I'd always been alone, scraping by on tips, but with Daniel, I wasn't anymore. But trouble wasn't far behind. One stormy night, the rain hammering the windows, a woman pounded on my door. Lila, his ex-partner, burst in, her coat dripping, her voice a venomous hiss. He's hiding something, she spat, shoving past me. Daniel's face darkened, his hands clenching into fists. She stormed out as fast as she'd come, leaving a chill in her wake. Later he pulled me aside, his whisper urgent. She framed me. There's proof in my old office. Files that could save me. My heart raced. I didn't hesitate. Then we get it. We broke into his old office at midnight. The building loomed dark and silent, rain streaking the windows as we slipped inside. Flashlights trembled in our hands, cutting through shadows. My pulse thundered as we rifled through drawers, finally finding a USB drive tucked under a stack of papers. It held emails, records, proof Lila had sabotaged him. We clutched it like a lifeline, breathless with relief. It cleared his name, got the creditors off his back, but Lila wasn't done. She cornered us outside the diner days later, her eyes burning with rage. You'll lose everything again, she snarled, the wind whipping her hair. Daniel stepped forward, rain soaking his shirt. I already did. And I'm still here. His voice was steel, unshaken. I'd left a tip with the cops, a hunch about Lila's lies. Sirens wailed as they arrived, lights flashing through the storm. They hauled her away, her screams swallowed by the rain. We stood there, drenched and breathless, the city buzzing around us. Daniel pulled me close, his arms strong despite everything. I've got nothing to offer, he said, his voice low against the patter of rain. I smiled, my hands resting on his chest. You're enough. He rebuilt his life step by step. A new job, a small gig coding again, late nights at my kitchen table with a laptop and determination. I was there, pouring coffee, cheering him on. Not for money, for him. That spilled coffee wasn't an accident. It was fate, a messy twist that brought us together. Because love, the real kind, doesn't need a bank account or a fancy suit. It just needs two people brave enough to start over. Months later, we stood on my rooftop, the city sprawling below. He took my hand, his watch long gone, sold to pay a debt. We made it, he said, and I nodded. The diner still hums with life, but now it's our story. A tale of coffee stains, second chances, and a love that outlasted the storm. Music fades out. Gentle piano,